Kurezome Yuzuki, Wishes on Falling Stars. Part 3. School had ended for the day. In the light of the sunset, the boy stood stock still on the pedestrian overpass. He leaned on the railing, his tired eyes closed. Every night he awoke to the sounds of his father and mother fighting. If his sister pacified them, it would become quiet, but the boy would be too worried about his anxiety-ridden mother to sleep. He felt like he was in a night that would never end. A tap came on his shoulder. He snapped in surprise like a taut wire. Standing behind him was his sister, looking tense. She told him he looked like he was about to jump, so she came running to him. Of course not. That's ridiculous. The boy smiled to make light of the idea. He turned towards the sunset and added, "Besides, if I died, it wouldn't change anything." His sister's clouded expression didn't change, and she let out a little sigh. She said, "But there are things people might not understand otherwise." The boy answered, "I guess so." She must have been thinking about their mother's friend who killed herself. Their mother became guarantor to her friend's large debts. On top of taking out loans, the friend stole money from their workplace. On discovery, she was scorned by everyone around her, called selfish and conceited. But when she committed suicide, no one called her those things then. It was only afterwards that everyone realized the anguish she was suffering. A deep silence fell between the siblings. To vanquish the mood, the sister slapped the boy on the back and said brightly, "It'll be all right, don't worry. Your sister's got this." From that day, his sister redoubled her efforts with their parents. She called it the Great Kiss and Make Up operation. She wrote messages with seaweed on the rice in their bento box lunches. She took their parents on walks. She strived to get top marks on the midterm tests. She played funny comedy shows on the TV. She cleaned the house. On seeing the devotion of their daughter, their moods relaxed. But it was only for a time. Soon their father would return to the verbal abuse, and their mother would return to sobbing like a child. The days continued like this. "I wonder if we can ever go back to those happy times." The boy thought this as he sat under the light bulb in his room, feeling surrounded by swirling darkness. For once it was quiet tonight. Usually at this time his father would be screaming, but tonight he was already asleep, exhausted from work. "Are you still awake?" His sister's voice came from outside his room. On opening the door, he saw his sister standing there, holding a blue glass picture frame. She said she wanted to adorn it with seashells and put a happy family memory inside. From the back of a drawer, the boy took out a candy tin. Opening the lid, decorated with stars, he revealed their seashells. Some were white on the outside and pearlescent on the inside. Some were the pink, conical homes of hermit crabs. Their bright colors had not faded at all over the years. This family has a special bond, and it will never be broken. The boy recalled this feeling from that day. The smell of the sea, the sound of the waves, the color of the sky, the light of the stars. The memory of that place was sharp. His sister decorated the picture frame with the shells and chose a photograph from an old album. She quietly placed the picture frame on the living room table, and their 4 smiling faces shone in the moonlight. Looking at the photograph, the boy remembered those happier times. There were some days when he could see all the stars, and there were some days when he couldn't see any at all. Now must be a time when happiness was only hidden. He knew everything would be okay. But the next day, the boy awoke to the sound of crashing glass. In his rage, his father threw the remote controller and hit the picture frame, shattering it. His sister, without a word of complaint, soothed her father and cleaned up the broken picture frame. On witnessing this scene, it took everything the boy had to not howl in pain. Walking home after school that day, the boy discovered his sister crouched on the ground. Alarmed, he ran over and put his hand on her back. He immediately knew she had a fever. On seeing that she could barely walk, the boy took out his phone to call their father, but his sister said, "It's fine," putting on a brave face. She said, "Don't tell Mama and Papa. I don't want to worry them." The boy supported his sister, and they slowly made their way home. At the entrance were their father's shoes. Recently, he was often ill and not going to work. From their parents' room, they could hear their father's raised voice. Typically, this would be when the sister would go to their father to calm him down, but she did not have the energy. The boy was worried about his mother's condition, but first, he had to get his sister to her room. He lay her on her bed and went to get an ice pack to lower her fever. Seeing the boy bustle about, the sister laughed weakly. "It's like we've changed places." When the boy was a child, he was weak and often sick like his mother. His sister must still think of him like that. The boy remembered. When he had a fever, his mother worried about him greatly. To see her like that pained him. Their relatives casually said, "You have a weak heart, no wonder you birthed a weak child." The boy hated to see his mother troubled by those baseless comments. He hated that he couldn't protect his mother. But during those times, he and his mother had the support of his father and sister, and they were happy. Those memories were now drowned out by his father's screaming voice coming from the bedroom. His sister winced at every outburst. "It surprises me every time. I can't get used to it," she said with a weak smile. Seeing her forcing a smile nearly drove the boy to his limit. If only he could take the place of his sister. If only he could do something to make it easier for her. Finally, he simply said, "It'll be all right." The sister put the back of her hand on her forehead. In a vanishing voice, she whispered, "It's not all right. I can't take it anymore." Hearing his sister hopeless for the first time stopped the boy's heart. She was always as bright as the sun, but she was putting up a front for everyone's benefit. She carried everything on her back. The boy always relied on her, setting his own worries on hers as he only watched and waited. This can't go on." The boy suddenly came alive and stood up. He left his sister's room and headed towards his father's voice. He entered his parents' bedroom. "Stop this, now!" He yelled loud enough to nearly split his throat. The boy was reflected in the wide eyes of his mother and father. Both of them were taken aback by their son, who was usually so quiet. Family help each other when it's hard. The boy spoke with a hoarse voice. He was used to neither raising his voice nor giving his opinion. He did not know himself or what he was doing. But he felt he needed to say how he felt, and he needed to make good on his sister's desperate efforts. From then, a week passed. The boy's father, taking his son's outburst to heart, did not raise his voice against the boy's mother again. No one was angry. No one was sad. Days just passed in a strange, quiet calm. But his sister's condition did not improve. Rather, whether it was because she was worried about making her parents worry, or because she was forcing herself to go to school, she became worse. Then one night, their parents called the boy and his sister into the living room. It was raining hard, and it made a battering sound on the window. For the first time in a while, the four sat at the dinner table. Their parents presented some documents to their children. They were divorce papers. On the brilliant white paper were the parents' official seals in red.